The room is quiet. You can hear your own heartbeat. An hour ago, everything was fine. You said something, maybe a small disagreement, maybe just a different opinion, and now they won't look at you, won't answer, won't even acknowledge that you exist. You check your phone, nothing. You reach out. Can we just talk? Nothing. The silence is so loud it has a weight to it. It presses against your chest. And without a single word being spoken, a message is being delivered, clear as a knife. You don't matter. And this is your punishment. The worst part? You're starting to believe it was your fault. That's exactly what they're counting on. By the time this ends, you're going to understand exactly what the silent treatment is, not as a quirk, not as someone needing space, but as a precision psychological weapon. You'll see how it works inside your brain, why it's almost impossible to resist, and most importantly, how to strip it of every ounce of its power. Once you name it, it can't touch you the same way again. Here's what most people get wrong. They think the silent treatment is about anger. It isn't. It isn't even about the argument. Psychologists define the silent treatment, formerly called ostracism, as the deliberate act of withholding communication, acknowledgement, and social existence from another person. It has nothing to do with needing time to cool down. That's something different. This is targeted. This is chosen. Researcher Kipling Williams at Purdue University spent over 2 decades studying what happens to the human brain when it experiences ostracism. What he found was disturbing. Being ignored activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Not similar, the same. Your brain processes social exclusion as a threat to survival, because for most of human history, being cast out from the group meant death. And that is what a narcissist is exploiting. They have found a weapon that reaches directly into your primal brain, bypasses all of your logic, and triggers a panic response that feels biological, because it is. Picture this. You've been dating for 8 months. It's been intense, maybe too intense, but when it's good, it's electric. Last night, you brought up something simple. You said you felt like your opinion doesn't matter sometimes. A reasonable thing to say, a vulnerable thing to say. And then, they went quiet. Not the quiet of someone thinking, the quiet of someone who decided to disappear. They slept facing the wall. This morning, nothing. No good morning, no eye contact. They moved through the apartment like you were furniture. You check your phone 100 times. Nothing. You reach out. Are we okay? Read receipt. No reply. By noon, your thoughts are spiraling. Did I say it wrong? Was I too harsh? Am I really that difficult? This is called the vanishing, and here is the psychology behind it. What the narcissist has done is transform your completely valid emotional need into a liability. The moment you expressed vulnerability, the moment you asked for something, they flipped the script. Suddenly, you are the problem, and their silence is the verdict. Inside your brain, something terrifying is happening. The anxiety of being ignored triggers a stress hormone cascade. Cortisol, adrenaline. Your nervous system is screaming at you to fix this, to reestablish connection, because connection equals safety. You are being biochemically coerced into taking responsibility for something that is not your fault. And when you finally break, when you say, "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought it up," they come back, warm again, like nothing happened. You feel relief, enormous, flooding relief. That relief is the reward. And your brain just learned, apologize, and the pain stops. They didn't need to say a word. They trained you in total silence. Here's what nobody says out loud. In a healthy relationship, silence after conflict lasts hours. In a narcissistic relationship, it lasts until you submit. That's the difference. And it's everything. Now, change the scene. You're not 8 months into a relationship. You're 8 years old. And the person who has gone silent isn't a partner. It's a parent. You don't understand what you did wrong. You never really do. Maybe you got a grade they didn't like. Maybe you said something that embarrassed them in public. Maybe you simply had a need at the wrong time. And then, for days, sometimes a week, you don't exist to them. They speak to your siblings. They laugh on the phone. But when you walk into the room, the warmth drains out, like someone cracked a window in winter. This is the most damaging form of the silent treatment, because it happens during the years when your brain is literally building its understanding of how love works. Research in developmental psychology shows it teaches the child 3 core beliefs that can persist for decades. 1. My needs are dangerous. Expressing them leads to abandonment. 2. Love is conditional. I must perform to deserve it. 3. Silence means I've failed. So I will spend my life in anxious vigilance, scanning every face for the first sign of coldness. You grow up, you get into relationships, and somehow you always seem to end up with people who go quiet on you. You wonder why you attract this. You don't attract it, you were calibrated for it. You were taught, at the most formative level, that you are supposed to chase the person who withdraws. That love looks like silence and pursuit. This is not your fault, but it is your pattern. And patterns can be broken. Here's a number that should stop you cold. Studies show that people who experienced parental ostracism as children are 3 times more likely to tolerate stonewalling in adult romantic relationships and less likely to recognize it as abuse. 3 times. Not because they're weak, because they were never shown what warmth without conditions looks like. Now you're an adult. You're professional. You think you've left all of this behind. And then you get a new manager. They seemed great at first, enthusiastic even. You were their favorite. You stayed late, delivered early, and you could feel the approval radiating off them. Then one week, you pushed back on a decision in a meeting. Professionally, politely, you had data to support your position. And something shifted. They stopped copying you on emails you should be copied on. In meetings, they spoke to every person around the table, and when their gaze reached you, it skipped, like you weren't there. When you sent updates, replies came hours late, 1 word at a time. Noted. This is the professional freeze, and it is more common than most organizations will ever admit. In the workplace, the silent treatment is perfectly camouflaged. It wears the costume of professionalism. There's no screaming, no name-calling, nothing that HR can put in a report. But the psychological effect on the target is identical. Your cortisol levels spike. Your performance begins to drop, not because you're incompetent, but because a portion of your cognitive bandwidth is now permanently allocated to monitoring this person's emotional temperature. You are doing 2 jobs, your actual job, and the exhausting, invisible job of trying to earn back someone's approval. And here is what you need to understand. The silence in the workplace is almost never about your performance. It is about your compliance. The moment you stopped being unconditionally agreeable, you became a threat. And this is how they contain threats. Without leaving fingerprints. And here's the thing. You might be listening to every single one of these scenarios and thinking, okay, but maybe they really were just upset. Maybe they do need space. That thought, that instinct to defend the person who hurt you, is called trauma bonding. And it is perhaps the most sophisticated part of the trap. Because the silent treatment doesn't just hurt you. It makes you protect the person who's hurting you. Here is the revelation that changes everything. Not every person who uses the silent treatment is a calculated predator. Some of them, and this is the part that haunts you, genuinely don't know what they're doing. They learned it from their own parents, from their own childhood home, where silence was the language of punishment. They watched it modeled 1,000 times before they were 10 years old, and somewhere in their developing brain, it got filed under, "This is how you handle conflict." They don't think of it as a weapon. They think of it as protection for themselves. This doesn't excuse the damage it causes. It doesn't make you wrong for the pain you felt, but it means something important. In some cases, this pattern is breakable. In the other person, and in yourself. The most dangerous narcissists are the ones who learn silence is power and refined it deliberately over years. But the most tragic figures in this dynamic, the people who do it without understanding why, who watched someone they loved use coldness as currency and absorbed it into their own emotional blueprint. Awareness is the beginning of change, for them and for you.
Hold on to this. The silent treatment only works if you think it reflects your worth. Once you see it as a predictable control tactic, it loses power. You can't control their silence, only your interpretation. Don't ask, "What did I do wrong?" Recognize it and don't chase. Stay calm, set a boundary, and mean it. Without your reaction, the tactic fails and its power disappears.